finally all moved in. Time for an apartment tour. So now that I'm finally unpacked, it's time for the last, hopefully the last apartment tour of this year. So something that's different about this apartment versus the other ones that I've shown is this one is actually off Airbnb. So we've signed a 6 months lease local, and luckily I do have some in-laws who are willing to create some post-dated checks for us, because one of the reasons that we stuck with Airbnb so long is when you try and rent locally, they want a bunch of post-dated checks. And that's something that's pretty much impossible as someone who's not a local Filipino, because opening a local bank account is an absolute pain if you've ever tried to open a bank account as a US citizen outside of the US. It's just an absolute nightmare. So I digress. You probably didn't need to know that, but our rent for here is going to be $600 a month, and it's probably going to be another $150 a month in utilities, and then we're paying about $65 a month for internet, and it's 100 MIPS for now, although I've been told that after a couple of months it's going to just start dropping, because that's what internet service providers tend to do here. But I'll show you some speed tests in a moment. So let's just jump right in to the absolute best part of this place, and that is the view. So we got lucky with one of the very few units in this particular tower that actually has some wraparound windows. So as you can see here, the view from the bedroom, and then also the view from my desk where I'm sitting right now, you get a great view of the city, and you can even see some mountains in the background. And on a really clear day, I can actually see boats in the at Manila in the bay at Manila Bay. So it's a fantastic view, and the only downside to this view is the fact that we are right on the boulevard, which means it's incredibly noisy, and I have to pause recording like every other 10 minutes because of ambulances and just trucks and honking going by, right? So there's the big pro and the big con. So let's get into all the little details here. So as you can see, I'm sitting right next to my desk, and my desk setup has not changed. I finally bit the bullet, and I'm spending a couple $100 in shipping, getting some new gear from the US because I just couldn't find it over the year, and hopefully I'll have a new setup tour that still is digital nomad friendly in about a month here. Then moving on to the rest of the living room, we got lucky in that whoever rented this place before us actually imported a bunch of IKEA furniture. The IKEA that's in the Philippines is still being built, and thanks to world events, it's not open yet. But we did have to go ahead and pay for the TV. Now, something that's cool about the TV though is because nobody's buying TVs for obvious reasons, we got a really good deal. So this is a 1080p. It's not a fancy 4K Ultra HD, but it's a 1080p from Samsung, and it was $550. And the kicker is you had to take the free 32-inch TV as well. I told them that I did not want it. I don't have any space for it. And they said, no, you actually have to take it. So we gave that to some of my in-laws, and so they'll enjoy the free TV, and we get a nice 43-inch for $550. So moving on down here, we actually had to put one of the dressers in the living room. Just one of the weird things you do as a YouTuber. And when we get to the bedroom tour, you'll see that we actually are saving a space for my wife to finally have a desk, because this is actually the first time in 3 or 4 years that I'm living in a one bedroom. Crazy to think that most of the time what you're seeing now would be the entire unit, and then that futon would be where we slept, where we sleep, which was pretty much the situation in Bellevue, because we were paying what, like $1,700 a month flat, and then after utilities and all that was like $2,400. So compare $2,400 a month to the $750 to $800 we're paying now, it's a pretty sweet deal in my book. So the other thing I wanted to point out is we actually have 2 routers, and this is something you're definitely going to deal with if you decide to be an expat or digital nomad, and that is you're going to have to use a VPN for your stuff to work. Now, normally what I would do is I would turn on either TourGuard or ExpressVPN on my computer when I need to do keyword research, although I found that incredibly cumbersome, and so I finally broke down and I spent about $300 on this router and an ExpressVPN subscription. And as you can see in this B-roll footage, earlier, the ExpressVPN software actually has a firmware for your router. So I can VPN the router itself, which means every time I connect a device to it, whether it's my laptop or the Apple TV that we finally bought, the devices that are connected to it are automatically magically transported into the US, and it's a lot less of a headache than using the application on the actual computer. And actually the Apple TV itself doesn't have any sort of native VPN capabilities. So the only way I could actually enjoy the anime subscription that I have, as well as the hundreds of dollars I've spent on Vudu movies, would be to actually pay for a VPN router, which was incredibly frustrating because I've paid a lot of money on services like Vudu, and of course I can't access any of the movies that I've paid for. Although Netflix is pretty good here. Netflix is like the equivalent of having an HBO or Showtime subscription in the US because of how quickly they get movies. Although I digress, so I highly recommend, if you decide to actually hunker down in another country, check out TourGuard or ExpressVPN. There's no affiliate links in the description because I really don't care which one you get. But if you do plan on being fancy and just picking up an extra router so you can VPN all devices at once and not really worry about the limits, then ExpressVPN I found has really, really good software, and their how-to articles are way better than TourGuard and some of the other ones that I've used in the past. So I think that's way more than you needed. I'll go through speed tests at the end because I realized the time I took to explain VPN services that you probably don't care about. So let's go ahead and go on to the pantry. Now, something that's a downside with most of the apartments that I've stayed here in the Philippines is there really is not any storage. Please excuse the ambulance. I'm just going to keep talking. And so we have all of our silverware and all of our, non-refrigerated food is pretty much out in the open. Something that I will note though, we did have to go ahead and pick up a coffee maker, a hot water thing, and of course a rice cooker. And that is, if you are in the Philippines or other countries, make sure you double check what the plug is. So something that we've noticed is, especially with electronics, like this rice cooker, you can see the plug is not a normal plug. And so it actually doesn't plug into any of the outlets in this unit. So we had to get a converter. So that's just something to keep in mind as you are traveling, is to just triple check that this electronics that you're purchasing actually match the outlets in the country that you're in. It's kind of weird, but with a couple of converters, we are good to go. So something really cool in the kitchen is we finally broke down and found, I shouldn't say broke down, we finally found a water filter that worked. So something that I've had to do all the way up until this point is I've had to go downstairs to the mini mart and buy water. I know that's, if you're environmentalists, are gonna go crazy because of all of the extra plastic, but you know what? It's way better than just having stomach rumbles because you're drinking water that has a bunch of a bunch of things that you're not really used to. And so this water filter has already worked, and I will say that I haven't had any stomach issues unlike the first month that I was here. And so this is the website if you want to check it out. Again, no affiliate links, but it has been a huge time saver, and I don't have to manually walk downstairs and then carry 5 of those giant water jugs at a time. That was a real pain, but I do have some backup just in case the water filter stops working. And so moving on, now we have the restroom. I won't spend too much time in here because it doesn't really matter. I would say that it is really nice to have a restroom that has an external window. That's something you're not going to find in most apartments here just because of how things are crammed in, which means I finally won't have to battle mold anymore. I've been battling mold every single place that we've lived. It doesn't matter how long we leave on the fan or how often we clean. We just seem to have mold problems, and that just comes with the humid climate and not having proper ventilation in bathrooms, right? And then the other thing you want to note is as you travel, you want to make sure that you know the type of washer dryer. So if you see a washer dryer that looks like this, it isn't actually a dryer. So the previous apartment tour in one uptown, you can see that this particular washer dryer unit actually was a washer dryer. Whereas the one we have here, it just kind of whips the clothes around really fast, and you're still gonna have to hang dry them, which is why you see a giant clothing rack in the shower, although we just hang our clothes in the bedroom to dry. So something to definitely keep in mind and take note of when you're looking at Airbnbs in different countries, and just know that when you you see a picture of a washer dryer unit, it's really just a washer, and it's just gonna whip your clothes around and get them super, super wrinkly. So I have to hang dry literally every single piece of clothing that I have. So now moving on to the final place, the bedroom slash my wife's office for now. I can't get enough of this view. Something that I really like doing at the end of the day is turning off all the lights I can, and I'll just be reading or taking some notes and journaling, and then just have that cityscape view in the background. It looks absolutely fantastic, and it's worth the extra price we're paying for this unit for that view, because there were some units that were a little less expensive. I know, less than $600 a month, but I just couldn't get over this view, and so I really, really enjoy this view. And as you can see, there's a lot of skincare things there, and that's because my wife is super into the whole Korean skincare thing. No, I don't really get it, so if you have any questions about it, I can't really help you. It's just her hobby and her thing, so we'll go ahead and take over that room with all of her skincare stuff. And so that does it for the lengthy grand tour of this new unit, or new to me, I should say, and we'll be staying here till at least the beginning of next year, and we'll just have to see how travel restrictions go. There are plenty of places to travel here in the Philippines that I would really like to show you, because it's been over a year now, and I still have not been to the beach. I've seen it from a car window, and I've seen it from afar, but I have not actually gone to the beach or even gone in the water at all. I think I've been to the pool a couple times in the first place we stayed. So I'm definitely way, way behind on what you normally do in a great country like this with fantastic beaches. And so before we wrap up, I want to go ahead and talk about internet speed. And so something that I wanted to share at the end, because I'm going to assume that you actually care, you still watching, thank you. Go ahead and hit that like button to let me know. The internet speed that you'll get here, for the most part, is going to be anywhere from 15 to 30 MIPS. So something that was really different between the Philippines Airbnbs and the Thailand Airbnbs is, if you saw any of my Chiang Mai videos, you'll know that the internet was just stupid fast. Like, I would go to a coffee shop and I would be getting 80 to over 100 from a coffee shop, right? Whereas in the Philippines, that's not really the case. In fact, with the exception of a couple of Coffee Beans, you shouldn't expect to get internet from any place that you visit. Actually, Coffee Bean and Denny's, of all places. I got around 5 at Denny's. But after that, you're pretty much going to be stuck with whatever you get in your Airbnb, or whatever you find if you decide to get a local SIM card from Globe or Smart, which are the big two. There's still debate on which one works better. It literally depends. Like, standing right here, I had a family member test. Globe was 1 and Smart was 8. And then I tried the next day and it was reversed, right? So you never really know with the providers here. But right now we have Globe, and so I get around 97 on my Chromebox, and then I get around 60 to 50 on my MacBook Air. And so that is when I'm not using any sort of VPN. When I turn on a VPN, or I use the VPN network, because I have 2 networks now. So if I go over to the VPN network, my speed drops to around 50 on my Chromebox, and then it drops to a paltry 5 to 7 on my MacBook. So obviously the internet card that's in my Chromebox is way better than whatever is in the MacBook Air. And again, I'm paying $60 to $65 a month to have pretty much the maximum, and that's for DSL. So you might see some signs here at promotions for fiber. It's not actually fiber, it's just DSL. They're using the word fiber as a marketing tool. So it is DSL, but you can get up to 100. Most of the Airbnbs that you'll be finding, if you are coming to the Philippines, they're going to be anywhere from 5 to 30 is the absolute max that I was able to find. And if the listing doesn't tell you, reach out and ask, because the biggest mistake I made with the first Airbnb that we stayed at was it was 0.5, literally 0.5. And it would take like 30 or 15 minutes just for Gmail to load on my phone. So you definitely don't want to have any assumptions when it comes to the internet speed when you're looking at different places in the Philippines, assuming that you're even allowed to travel, right? But maybe this information will be helpful in the future, unlike what I experienced in Chiang Mai, Thailand, where pretty much everything was high speed and it was just ridiculous how fast everything was. So that does it for the apartment tour, talking about VPNs, and of course, course, comparing this place to the 2 other Airbnbs that I stayed at. And the very, very first one, because I completely spaced on it, the very first one I stayed at was $500 a month, and that was all inclusive, although we only stayed there for 2 months because of that obvious internet problem. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about this apartment or just being a digital nomad in general, even though I've only been able to go to 2 places for obvious travel restrictions reasons, go ahead and comment below, because I'm definitely going to continue this experiment of trying to be a digital nomad. Although at this point I'm pretty much an expat, but YouTube tells me that people like searching for digital nomad more than they do expat. So I'm going to keep using digital nomad even though I'm technically an expat at this point. But I digress, so go ahead and comment below with any of your expat/digital nomad questions. And as always, keep building the business you love.